Hey guys, and we're back tonight with your boy Ocey Phillips, and we're here to break down the last changes that Google updated for e-commerce. Now, this is going. Some of the things have been in play all the time, but this is going to be a real game changer in terms of how you structure your e-commerce platform, and not just your regular direct-to-consumer e-commerce platform, but more so the platform that is a marketplace also, or if you're dealing with any other frameworks, Shopify, anything, Magento, anything. These are things that would make it a little bit more tricky, depends on the platform that you're using. So you can't just go on and just pick a platform just so anymore. Um, Google gives you the best practices basically on how to operate, and they would want you to follow this guide to get the best out of your e-commerce solution. So let's dive right into it, right? So we're looking at it here, best practices for e-commerce in Google search. We all know Google is the number one search engine in the world, essentially. Um, they have 92% market share, I think. If I'm not mistaken, in the Caribbean, they have around 80, between 80 and 85% market share. And that really stems from the fact that a lot of people just still use Safari here. And there's been a huge increase in recent times in people using DuckDuckGo and some other alternative search engines, right? But Google still has the most market share, and 9 out of 10 times your target market, your ideal customer, are the people who are going to Google and for their micro moments. And those micro moments are how to fix this, how to do this, what should I do? I want to buy. Where can I find this locally? Where can I find this next to me? Right. So for those who don't know, go to Think with Google, check out all the content that they have on micro moments. Look up that, look up zero moments of truth, look up that, and see how you could do your product or your keyword research, or to find your product demand or your market demand. Right. So we're diving into this documentation here, and I think this was released this week, just a couple of days ago, and we're going to run through it in depth here. A critical challenge for any e-commerce website is being discovered. Discoverability is number one, even before you get paid. Even if you figure out how to get paid, if somebody really wants your product, they could find you and they could Western Union you the money or something like that, and you could figure it out. But obscurity, if they don't know that you sell it, they can't buy from you. If they can't find your website, they can't buy from you. So it's not just enough to build a website, to build a platform and just have it sitting there. You must optimize it on based on these best practices. So acquiring customers and building a relationship with them is an important driver for business growth. And the Google could help shoppers discover your site at each stage in the shopping journey. Now, Google has their own shopping journey, their own buyer's journey, the messy middle. So again, go to Think with Google, and look out that you could see the messy middle, and they have their own sales funnel basically on how people navigate through search based on the data that they have and find your product. Now you have to take this with a pinch of salt always, because Google, and this is designed for the wider markets. This is not totally designed for the Caribbean markets. So one of the main things they talk about a lot is Google Shopping, which is Google's product search engine, right? So there's Google and there's a Google Shopping, that's the product search engine, and behind that there's Google Merchant Center and all of those things, where it's only available in select countries that you get those benefits, where you could upload your product information directly, and they match your product descriptions with Google search, which is essentially what Amazon's A9 search engine does, right? So we need to be careful of that. And I will try to break this down as much as in a Caribbean context. So this set of guides is for developers who are building websites and that want to ensure that the site works well with Google. So the focus is online commerce sites, e-commerce, but many of the points are equally relevant to sites that list products that are only available at brick and mortar stores. So even if you have a brick and mortar store, but you still list your products on Google Business and stuff like that, this really applies to you also, and we will see that as we dive in deeper, right? When you share your e-commerce data and site structure with Google, Google can more easily find and phrase your content, which allows your content to show up in Google search and other Google surfaces. So right now, Google is saying that their biggest problem is that they don't have enough content to supply the demand for the searches that come across the platform on a daily basis. So these best practices are really for you to optimize your content on your platforms so that Google will be able to index it easily and match your offerings with the searches in different ways, right? And Google consider Google services as almost anything that a consumer touch. That's Google. So that's YouTube and all the other things that Google touch or Google own, and you could use as a search engine or that would drive search. Everything from images and everything. All these Google services that somebody could touch and ask a question, you need to be able to show up very relevant on that. So this could help shoppers find your site. So we're gonna dive into the topics here, right? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 topics here, right? And these 7 topics you'll have a breakdown and we'll dive into it here. So the topics are where e-commerce content could appear on Google. That's in number 1. Where could your content appear on Google? Number 2 is share your product data with Google, right? So share product data with Google. Decide on a method which to use when you're sharing your product data with Google. Include structured data relevant to e-commerce. Help Google understand and appropriately present your content by providing explicit information about the meaning of your page with the structured data, right? How to launch a new e-commerce site, they're going to tell you how to do that, and we'll break that down. Designing a URL structure for e-commerce sites, that is also there. Help Google understand your e-commerce site. So they're telling you here's what how to structure your site so that we could understand it better and match your products. Because again, millions and millions of people are going online every day with new business, and it's going to be really, really difficult for your company or your product or your website to stand out. In the next couple of months, the next 2, 3 years, SEO would be one of the highest needed skills for almost everybody, because as your business go online, whether it's service or product, you need to be found ahead of your competitors. So the competitive analysis, market research, benchmarking, stuff like this is going to be really, 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 really important, right? And things like pagination, incremental loading, page loading, and the impact on Google's search, right? So we're gonna open these. Forgive me, I like to open a lot of tabs even in my own brain sometimes. And then we're going to dive into them one by one. And then we're going to break it down. Of course, everything here, I'm doing this from a Caribbean context. And of course, this could be found on Google Search Central. I am just putting a little context state for my people in the Caribbean that don't understand. So we start with the first one. All right. Where e-commerce content could appear on Google, right? And Google has multiple surfaces, like we were talking about before. When I say how do you show up on Google surfaces, providing the right content on the appropriate Google surface could help you reach potential customers. Now, they didn't stop at the right content. They said, how could you how you providing the right content on the appropriate surface, right? So YouTube is for videos, it's not for images. Google Business is for localized shopping, and that is a part of the micro moments. People would type, "Where could I find a bike store near me?" And you need to search for that. So you need to optimize in Google Search, Google Maps, and a bunch of other things. So let's dive into it. So these are the surfaces that Google have. It's called one, Google Search, right? To learn more about the technique that could improve your ranking in Google Search, see the SEO starter guide, right? They have their own starter guide for SEO of different ways that you could present your search engine results on your search engine results page, right? Google Images for guidance on how to best prepare your images for indexing by Google, because Google would index your images and show it also. There's best practices for that. Google Lens, if you want your products to be found in Google Lens search results, make sure that your product details are uploaded to Google Merchant Center. Again, opt in for free product listings and follow the Google image best practice. So Google Merchant Center is tricky, and I'll do a separate video on that. But again, that is Google's area that they using to combat a lot of the product searches. So that is that merchant area where you could upload most of your things and have that. And then there's Google Shopping tab. Sorry. Google Shopping tab If you want your products to be found in Google Shopping tab via paid or free experiences, upload your products to Google Merchant Center. Google My Business, like I spoke about before, to provide your business with business details to Google. So you do that, you go on, you build your profile, you get your address, you message Google. Google asks you now for your address, they mail you a code, you put that in, and you authorize your Google business. And it goes even further into Google Maps to make your products available in Google Maps. Search results, upload your products with inventory location data to Google Merchant Center and see the local inventory ads on the onboarding guides. So some of these things may not be available in Trinidad. Of course, Google Merchant Center has the available countries. Now, if you are in Trinidad and you are selling products in different countries, you're still allowed to use Google Merchant Center. Or if you're in the listed countries and you want to sell in those countries, you could still go ahead and do that. But your ads and stuff would only show up in those markets, right? So again, create content to meet different customer needs, right? And that is, here's what product data is the most obvious type of e-commerce related content, but the other types of information could also be useful to shoppers at different stages of their shopping journey. Here are some examples of the content that could help you reach customers across more surfaces on Google. Company story, special offers, merchant products reviews, customer product reviews, your catalog, education opportunities, live streams, and of course, customer service touch points. Right? So we're not going to dive deep into this. All of this is free on Google Search Central, and there's documentation to help you do all the things, anything that you're looking at. I am just breaking this down really, really quickly. Right? Share your product data with Google. This is where it gets a bit tricky. To increase your eligibility for richer appearances, and for those of you who don't understand, you could just go on YouTube and look up rich snippets and how SEO affects that, or how that looks in from an SEO standpoint. You could do that. Include structured data in your site's product pages, right? So we're looking at, do you have structured data in your existing site's product pages, or do you even know what that is? So then you go back to your developer and say, hey, is my data structured in a way that Google could index it and crawl it appropriately so it could show up on product searches? Those are the questions that you have to ask. Tell Google directly which products you want to show on Google, right? Again, this may not be the same if you don't have access to Google Merchant Center, but you could do this in different ways once you optimize your WooCommerce, or it depends on the platform that you're using, right? Add product structured data to web pages. They will tell you how to add those product structured data to your web pages so it can be indexed and crawl and show up higher in your search engine results page, right? Upload data to Google Merchant Center. Here's that, and they tell you how Google uses structured data and Google Merchant Center data, right? Of course, there's a how-to video being done by people from Google. Jump on that, look at that. I am just providing regional context for the people that do not know, right? And resolving updates and delayed issues, right? So just we could run through this quickly. The experience product which results in Google search, again, from a SEO standpoint and a search engine results page standpoint, Google searches uses product structured data to display product rich the results. If your data on your website is not that, meaning if you just have an image and the image doesn't have that title and that alt text and the image isn't optimized for image searches, then that is one thing that would work against you, right? And the structured data needs to be involved in product rich results. Your product should have probably individual product pages, because again, it needs a certain minimum amount of text via image and stuff like that to be shown up and ranked, because your product description may not be enough for Google to index it and crawl it enough for it to show it up in search engine response pages, right? Google image results again here. Google Shopping tab. Again, Google Shopping tab is free anywhere. You could use that, but to get the most out of it, you should really use Google Merchant Center, right? Google Lens. This is new and this is really, really interesting. So the last update that came on most Android phones would show that Google Lens is there, and it would change the lookout. They change the look, they change the UI, the UX, etc. And you just have one click there, triggers your camera, and then you could almost scan anything translate new things. But what makes it beautiful, this is now allowing you to scan a product from your phone and it would show up in your Google search. And again, who else is going to see that, right? If people are using their phone to do that, who's going to see the results, right? If I use in my phone, I want to see the results, but who's going to show up, right? So I don't know if the people who using Google Lens are your target market. Should you optimize for that? Should you not optimize for that? I think you should, because the work being done here is also a lot of work still, and you might as well just do it, right? Include structured data relevant to e-commerce. And this tells you where Google crawls and indexes your e-commerce website as it does other websites. Applying algorithms to understand the content and its intent. And structured data is a standardized machine-readable format for providing information about the page. And this could improve the accuracy of Google's understanding of your content. So essentially, they just really want you to have your information readable by the algorithms. Just like when you're in primary school and you're using a red line, blue line copybook, and the teacher say, "Well, I can't understand that." Just make your content legible for the search engine so it could index, and by extension, more people could find you and they could buy your products, right? So all of this is here on an introduction on how to use Google, how Google uses structured data for it. And again, the average person may not understand this, right? Because if we go back down into things like schema and stuff like that, it gets kind of technical. The SEO part of it gets technical, and the average person may not understand it. But Google has everything here in like layman's terms so that people could understand it. And if you don't understand, feel free to drop me a line, feel free to drop me a message, or feel free to book a call with me, right? So we're going down. So we begin talking about local business, and this is where we spoke about Google My Business, and we have it here. Register directly with Google My Business. How you could show up for localized search, right? And again, that's one of your micro moments, because we all did it. Where could I find this near me? A tire shop near me, a grocery near me, electronic store near me, stuff like that. You need to be optimized for that for your local people. Product. This tells Google more about your product so you could show up on actual product searches, right? And then reviews. Again, I don't know why this is moving so quick. Yeah. So reviews show up and as ratings, and Google's Eat and Your Money, Your Life frameworks, meaning how do you establish authority and stuff like that on your page so that people trust your page and Google could keep sending more and more traffic to your pages, right? The how-tos, that is the next one of your micro moments where people go to Google and ask how to do something, right? So Google helps you display rich results for how-tos, right? How to do this. And rich result could either be a video, a DIY video. It could be a video and a snippet. It could be a description from your YouTube. It could be multiple things, right? And these are the things that we need to look at when we do that. FAQ pages. Google does a lot with FAQ pages and tells Google how to index the page, and it will show up as FAQs so that when people type in your questions, whether your questions is a how to, it shows up your FAQ. This works a lot with customer experience and stuff like that, because a lot of people don't understand that having people call into your call center is not really something that you should want right now. You should optimize for self-service so that you could retool and repurpose your existing customers, right? Breadcrumbs list, right? Meaning, how do you layer your user experience so that people could find a product or navigate across your site and then find their way back, right? Website, again, optimize your website for on basic website structure, basic optimization, and on-page SEO, also off-page SEO, stuff like that. And video object is actually new, and video is becoming increasingly important for e-commerce. So there's quite a few videos out on how to use YouTube for e-commerce, especially when it comes to things like live and social shopping and stuff like that, right? And apparently marking up pre-recorded videos such as like on a product page or live stream events could help Google present the videos appropriately in Google search results. So it really depends on how you do that. If you do a product video or product description and you tie it to YouTube, that search result, that other search engine could help you, right? How to launch a new e-commerce site. So to make sure Google could find a new site at launch, we recommend doing the following, right? Verify site ownership. Ask Google to index your site. So you go to Search Console and you have them crawl the URLs and you check that, right? Small number of URLs, you could use this URL inspection tool. Large number of URLs, you could provide a sitemap, right? Track how Google search is indexing your site, right? Again, Google Merchant Center may verify and cross-check certain things if you're using that. If you're not using that, then you could use the index coverage report and check the progress of indexing, right? If you also have a physical store, you could establish your business details with Google in a different way through the Merchant Center, of course, and to provide additional information such as description. So the Merchant Center really is a guide and a safe space where you could go to and get things done, right? In addition, Google's marketing that comes into here with launching. There's something called the grand reveal that they have now, which essentially is making your site go live to the public and Google at the same time. Sometimes it's not done at the same time. Homepage launch, right? Initially make the homepage of your site available to the public and Google while you work on other pages. Launch without product availability. Launch your full site to the public and with the products marked as out of stock. So you could do that and still drive traffic, but you manage your customer expectations. And then you could launch your full site live early with a separate marketing event for the official launch. So Google deals with all of that in Merchant Center, and it gives you the pros and the cons of soft launch, launch without product availability, and everything here. So Google is holding your hand and crossing the road, right? This digital highway essentially, or they're building a walkover for you to get safely. Designing a URL structure. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky because a lot of people like to use random URLs that has a lot to do with how they think and how they feel. So they want to use a long URL, but Google is telling you that the URL structure matters, right? And they'll tell you why it matters. A good URL design helps Google crawl and index your site, while a poor URL structure could lead to, here's what, content could be missed. The same content may be retrieved multiple times. The crawler may think your site contains infinite number of pages, right? We'll go back here. Well-designed URLs could help Google more efficiently locate and retrieve web pages on your e-commerce site. And if you control the structure of your URLs, for example, you're building your own site from scratch, then this guy could help you decide on your URL structure. So before you even go to GoDaddy, Bluehost, or any one of them, and you want to pick out a long URL, you need to understand how your URL structure affects Google's crawling. So they have URL recommendations, minimizing number of alternative URLs that return the same content, right? So some people who had a HTTP unsecure URL and then they move to a secure URL, sometimes people still go to your unsecured URL, and because it redirects, it doesn't always reflect on your Google Analytics or your Search Console, right? So you end up with a 301 error in the back end of your site, and you could look up all those things, right? If upper and lowercase text is treated the same, that is an issue. Make sure each page is paginated. In paginated results has a unique URL, right? And you see the most URL mistakes in pagination, right? So a lot of people need to understand how that works, right? Help Google understand your e-commerce site structure. And then they say Google tries to find the best content on your site by analyzing the relationship between pages based on the linkages. And this means navigation structures on your site, menus, filters, facets, all these things could impact Google's understanding of your site structure, right? So you need to be careful of how your site is structured. So it isn't always a fancy thing. So they talk about how the site navigation, like I just spoke about, Google crawler friendly. So you need to figure out if that navigation is crawler friendly, because your navigation and your filters may throw off how Google index or crawl that site. Promote your best categories or products in different parts of it, and you could do that, right? And last but not least, the pagination, incremental page loading, and their impact on Google search, right? You could improve the experience of users on your site by displaying a subset of results to improve your page performance, right? And we're going to look at beyond the search results, you may load partial results on your e-commerce site, so category pages, blog posts, user reviews, and stuff like that, right? And you don't want that to have your site incrementally load content for different things. So selecting the best UX pattern for your site is ideally what you need. And to display a subset of a larger list, you could also choose between different UX patterns, right? So pagination, where a user could use links such as next, previous, and page numbers to navigate between pages that display one page of results at a time. Again, so you don't want to have 40 pages and people going, clicking next, 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 trying to find a product. But then you also don't want to have the filters there that take away from from Google's indexing, right? And it shows off how they incrementally load your content. So you need to find the right balance for that while maintaining Google's. So again, there's pros and cons here for pagination. So pros, it gives users insight into the result size and the current position. So if you click a search, it will show here's what 1 to 50 of 4,000 results. But do you have the option to scroll and I could see 100 or 250 at a time on a page? Or could I now facet the search, not filter, not boys, girls, men, women, children, different sizes, stuff like that, color? No. How do we facet the search now? Meaning, how do I tailor the search so the person could now search different size, by pricing, by all these other sub searches that you could go down in? How do you do that? So one of the cons of it is more complex controls for users to navigate through results, and content is split across multiple pages rather than being a single continuous list. And viewing more requires new page loads again. So if I had to view 10 things but to go through 20 page loads, then that is now also a good look from your UX, and Google is going to penalize that. You're not going to show up, right? So, how Google indexes the different strategies. This is really, 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 really key, and it could get a lot technical. And this is just an overview video, and I want to dive into each part. So I'll dive into each of the 7 ones in depth, right? And then I would drop that on my page also. But this is just to show you guys here that right now Google is changing the game. And from what I'm saying changing the game, I'm talking about you may not afford, or you may not be able to just throw up your site and win. What you could have done 2 months ago to get search results is not what you could do now. Also, for those people who are looking at SEM and paid ads, that's not sustainable in terms of your cost per click or your pay per click, right? You can't afford to organically get clients when your customer acquisition cost is so high because of paid media and SEM campaigns, right? You need to now look at how you could do this organically and get your site to reach your targeted people based on your keyword research and stuff like that. Have that done based on Google's best practices here. And it's going to get tricky. People are going to get it wrong. I'm going to get it wrong. A lot of people are going to get it wrong. But what you want to do most importantly is look at the fact that all of this could happen if you take your e-commerce site seriously. And for all the people who have been following my content and stuff, you could look at the other videos and what I did and how to calculate your break-even point and stuff like this. So after you go through this, I have all the frameworks on how to structure your e-commerce site as a business, break-even point, profit, how to do all the metrics that you would use from an e-commerce standpoint to measure to make sure that you get the best return on investment out of this, right? So thank you guys for jumping in and looking at my video. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Help somebody along this e-commerce journey so that they themselves could get out of a rut, or they themselves could make money and grow their business and sustain the lifestyle that they want. So thank you guys. It's your boy Ocey Phillips. Check me out on oceyphillips.com. Check me out anywhere on any social media. And I have a couple things in store for you guys coming in, right? Thank you.